If you try something and you fail and I smack you around about it, then you're not going to try anything new. So you have to set some safe spaces where it's like, okay, this may or may not work, but we're going to try it. One of the things I really, really believe in are pilots. I love having people pilot something because it's safe, right? So if I say, look, here's this new curriculum, I want you to pilot it. And if you're successful, great. If you're not successful, you know, now obviously you're not going to let students in schools fail and that sort of thing. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that if it doesn't meet our expectations completely, it's going to be okay. And, run with it.
Welcome to Innovating Education, the podcast where we explore fresh ideas and actionable strategies to create lasting change in education. I'm your host, Dr. Riley Williams, and today we have the privilege of speaking with a truly inspiring leader, Dr. Leslie Sparcello. With a remarkable 35-year career spanning roles from classroom teacher, district leader, and university professor, Dr. Sparcello currently serves as superintendent of Cedars International Schools. Dr. Sparcello has dedicated her life to empowering others and fostering innovation. Cedars International Academy schools are unique in their commitment to project-based learning and a personalized learning approach. Cedars International Academy's mission is to provide all students with rigorous learning and personalized relationships within a safe community, ensuring their success as responsible, globally conscious citizens. Their vision reflects a commitment to preparing students to excel in a rapidly changing and competitive world through project-based learning and collaboration with peers, businesses, and the community at large. By fostering problem-solving skills, interpersonal skills, and resilience, Cedars aims to develop lifelong learners and productive members of society. Dr. Sparcello, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So let's start with your incredible journey. Over 35 years, you've held such diverse roles. Can you share the pivotal moments or experiences that shaped your approach to leadership?
I started as a classroom teacher in Kansas City. I'd gotten married. I'm a Texas native and made my way back eventually. And so came back to San Antonio and became a campus level principal. And from there, I went on to become an academic dean and I was a campus principal at a private school. And I went back to public schools and became an academic dean and then a principal of a 6A campus out in West Texas. And then came back to San Antonio. San Antonio, I'm kind of like bobbing back and forth between it all the time, and but it's my home base. And I became an associate superintendent in a charter school district, and now I am in Austin, Texas, as a superintendent of Cedars, which is also a charter district. It's only my fourth year in charter, but like I said, I've been in traditional public, I've been in private schools, and I've been in charter schools. I really love them all. Everything is about the kids and making sure that they have opportunities and they have what they need to meet their needs. And I don't know that it's so much about pivotal moments, it's more about pivotal people. I feel like when I think about the times that I've made a change or done something different or innovative, it always seems to be the memory of it always seems to be tied to another great leader who did something for me, who, helped me to make that next step or that leap and have faith and believed in me or gave me a skill set. So I think it's a little bit less about the moments of tasks or things like that, but more about the people that have led me, which is really why I believe so much in servant leadership, because it's people who have served me and believed in me. And so I want to do that for others.
We have to keep Austin weird, right? That's y'all's slogan.
Absolutely. I adore Austin. I actually still live in San Antonio and I work here in Austin. So I commute between the two cities and they're so hugely different. But I love Austin. Austin is a place where you can be whoever you want to be. And I love that.
Speaking of servant leadership, your leadership philosophy emphasizes servant leadership, empowerment, and adaptability. How did these core principles develop over your career, and how have they influenced your work as superintendent at Cedars International School?
Again, I think they developed because I was just fortunate enough to be led and brought up in the way that I am by other leaders who are that way. They were, I think, of the just the individuals that taught me how to do the things that I do and how good that felt for me to have somebody believe in me to learn. I'm a learner. At the end of the day, I'm still learning every day. I'm still, after 35 years, I still am amazed at how many things I'm like, oh my goodness, why have I done it that way all this time? Or why did I not know that? These people who empowered me just helped me to develop that philosophy of that being the right way to lead. Because when I got into the classroom, I loved the kids so much. And I was like, if I were a campus level principal, I could impact teachers who impact kids. Like that exponentially is going to broaden my reach. And I never thought I wanted to be anything above a campus level principal. I thought that was as far as I needed to go. That was going to be my capacity. But again, I kept running into these leaders who are like, I need you to do this. You can do that. Let me help you. And just kept progressing through. And then I think when you have people like that around you, then you start to see it in other people. I remember a very specific conversation when I got my first high school principal job with one of my assistant principals. And my question to her was, why are you not a principal yet? Because she had been around for a very long time and she was just phenomenal. And she was like, I don't know. And she just didn't believe in herself. And I was like, oh no, before I'm done here, you will be a campus principal because you're needed. Your skill set is needed and you're so good at it. And within 6 months she moved up. Within a year and a half she was a principal of her own campus. Now she's leading in the district office in Midland ISD, and she's amazing. And she's just one of many stories. Earlier today I had someone from my previous district call me, and I get those calls regularly, which make me so happy. I just love it when they reach back out and they're like, okay, I just want to run this by you, or what do you think? And most of the time they've got the answer. They just needed somebody to confirm, to validate, to help them believe in themselves. And after having somebody do that for you for a while, what I know is that those people are now doing that for other people. So that's how education should really work. We foster that belief in other people. It's not so much about can you read, right? It's about, do you know how to think critically? Do you believe in yourself? Can you move forward even when you're a little afraid? Or do you have a network of people that you can reach out to bolster you when you need that? And probably strayed away from the question, but those people did that for me, and that's what really developed my philosophy. And as I see it in action and I see other people benefiting from it and I see other people then replicating it, then I know that what I'm doing it has value.
And I think that's a really important thing to talk about. In my experience, I learned from the people who were leading me. Either I want to lead like this person, or I absolutely do not want to lead like this
Yes,
person, right?
for sure. And I definitely, and those people pop out very quickly in my mind of those individuals. That was a very pivotal moment, for me, in the sense of I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be that person who does that to that other person, or who doesn't listen, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, definitely we are what we are because of or in spite of.
Yes. Well, so let's talk a little bit about balancing your servant leadership with strategy. Of course, servant leadership is such a powerful concept, but balancing it with the strategic demands of being a superintendent must be really challenging. How do you navigate that balance?
I've learned to use my Google Calendar. And I think you use the strategy to get the balance because you carve out time for the things that are important. One of the activities that I have used in every place I've gone is the Stephen Covey rock activity. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but It's a great, like, the video is from the 80s, so it's very dated, and the woman's got like shoulder pads this thick, and so you have to keep that in mind. It's the only video I can really find of it, but maybe I'll recreate it someday in a more modern sense, because it's so phenomenal. He takes a bucket of rocks and he takes a bucket of sand, and the bucket of rocks represent your big rocks, the things that are super important to you that you should always have time for. And the sand represents all the minutia, right? The things that pop up, like, oh my gosh, there's these days it's things like an intruder on campus or something. But like yesterday for me, it was the freezers going out in the cafeteria and the food's all going to go bad. What do we do? And we have to make this decision before we go home, because otherwise we might come in the morning and there's no milk for children, and then the meat's all defrosted, and those sorts of things. Those are those emergencies. And it could also be the compliance reports or the email, just the little minutia things. And when he does the activity, he first pours the sand in and then he tries to put the rocks on, and the rocks won't fit. And so he's like, let's try this a different way. Let's take this bucket, this third bucket, and let's put the rocks in first. And then when you put the rocks in first, they all fit. And then when you pour the sand in, it levels off perfectly. And I that was a very profound activity for me, because I was like, oh, is that a rock? So I have to ask myself all the time, is that a rock or is that sand? And the sand, I just have to let go. And I'll tell you, like, right now, and I don't feel bad about saying this out loud on a podcast, because she and I've had many conversations about this. My administrative assistant, my business manager, is very much about the sand. And so I'm constantly have to telling her, I'm not dealing with that today. I'm not doing that. Or I will say things like, I'm going to answer my email from 8 to 9. I'm going to get on my email first thing. I'm going to knock out anything that's important. And then I won't be back on my email again until I go home tonight at 5 o'clock after dinner or whatever. Maybe before I go to bed, I'll check it. If you need me, walk into my office and see me personally. Call me on my phone. I'll pick it up. Um, so it's really about, to me, it's about the rocks. You determine what your rocks are, you know what they are, and they're tied directly to your values. And then that other stuff, you learn to say no, and it's really okay. And people get upset, and you learn to be okay with people being upset. And you can say, I'm so sorry that that's upsetting you right now, that I'm not going to answer my email, but I'm not going to answer my email. And you start to, I always tell people, I'm not like a huge Dr. Phil fan, but I'll give him a shout out for one phrase. And that is, you teach people how to treat you. And when it's amazing that when people know what your expectations are, even if they don't necessarily agree with them, they're much better with it and they're okay with it. They get okay with it. And they'll start to say things like, Dr. S, she's not going to do this or that. So then they learn to find other ways to get what they need within the parameters that you've set. And you set respectful, professional parameters. It's that simple. So that's how I balance things. And
And
it's not always balanced. Sometimes it does feel a little like, but but I know when I'm out of balance. I tell people I know when I'm out of balance because I have sticky notes everywhere. Because I'm a person who keeps a bullet journal. I check things off, that kind of thing. But when I have stuck sticky notes on piles, I'm like, oh no, I'm out of balance. I also have some fences for myself where I'm like, oh, I can see that's a red flag. I need to get back and check.
the rock and sand is a really powerful metaphor. I'm going to have to look up the video for sure.
Yeah, it like I said, just be prepared for the shoulder pads. But the message is great. I'm a huge Franklin Covey fan.
So, you are obviously passionate about developing others and fostering empowerment. Can you share a success story where this philosophy led to a transformative outcome for a teacher or a student?
I think that the story that I shared for you with the assistant principal, she's one. Another one, I had a teacher that really wanted to be an AP, and she's autistic. She will tell people up front, I'm autistic. I have some struggles with communication and things like that. She's very high functioning in that sense, and that she recognizes it, and she can put herself in check for certain things, or she'll listen to other people when they say, hey. But she wanted to be an assistant principal as well. And um, she will tell you the story of walking into my office, and I've done this to many people. Like, you can walk into my office and you can fall down and kick and scream like a dead bug. You can say whatever you need to say. You come in here and you tell me, what do you need? And we're now, if we're out in a public setting, and that's a different story. But if you really need me, you need to come in here, and you can be as crazy as you need to be, and we'll work through it. And she's one who will call me on a pretty regular basis, maybe once every 3 to 6 months, and give me an update. But she is an assistant principal with IDEA Charter Schools now, and she's doing a great job. And for somebody who has a disability to be able to move forward and lead, and she's so intelligent and so passionate and compassionate, and I think she just needed somebody who, again, like you're talking about believing in people and giving them faith in themselves. Like, when you question yourself and you can't give yourself a yes and that positive motivation, then you have to have somebody that you can go to who will be truthful with you. You don't want people to just blow sunshine. You want people to, be truthful. So you have to find that person who can balance it out and be truthful to you and help you. So I feel like, and she would tell you. And another story, when I was looking at the questions and thinking about it, I remember when I first moved back to San Antonio a couple of years ago, my husband and I were having dinner, and the waitress was like, Dr. K. No, I was like, well, it's Dr. S now because I've remarried, but yes, I was Dr. K. And she's like, oh my goodness. And it was one of my students, when I was an academic dean, who was one of my little fighter girls. I worked on the West Side, and there were a lot of little fighter girls and young women, well, yeah, and young men. They're just my passion. I'm a secondary person. I love elementary kiddos. They're amazing. I have an affinity for the secondary because they're just right there on the cusp of adulthood. And I feel like this is our last opportunity to pour something into you before you're out there on your own. And they have so many things coming against them at that age, especially now. So she was one of my little fighters, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I remember coming into your office when nobody else would let me have a fit. Basically, like, you would, and then send me back." And I used to keep this drawer. I have a picture of it, of snacks that was this deep credenza drawer, and my boys went to school with me every Sunday. We'd go shopping, and we would buy bags of chips and candies and just different things. And I had those there for teachers and for students. So when they came in, I was like, oh, well, okay, before, would you like a snack? And give them a little bag of Cheetos or something. And it's okay, go ahead and eat your Cheetos. And then give me just a minute. And then now let's talk about what's going on. And she was just like, I have this job now and I'm doing these things and I have kids. And she was so proud of herself. And just for her to say, thank you so much for believing in me and for letting me throw a fit in your office every now and then, but also correcting me and sending me back and that sort of thing. So, those moments are great. And here, that had been, I haven't been at that campus for years. So, she's in her mid to late 20s. And I was like, oh, that's just great. I don't see myself as a recognizable person. When somebody recognizes me outside of my family or friends or whatever, that they remember me from years ago having done something, I'm like, okay, that's powerful. And that makes me feel really good.
Love that. So, another thing is you've been very critical of a trend towards pre made systems and micromanagement in education. What steps can schools take to pivot back towards fostering the expertise and creativity in its teachers and principals?
I am a big proponent of data. I love numbers. And if you can show me the numbers that your kids are being successful, how you got there is going to be the best possible way. And who am I to question that? And I'm not an expert on everything. I consider myself an expert on leadership, but I'm not an expert on eighth grade math. I'm not an expert on reading. Um, and so if you have, a creative, and I think that's why we're losing. It's one of the main reasons that we are losing a lot of teachers. Like, people just don't want to go into our profession because nobody wants to be micromanaged all the time. And I do think there has to be a balance. I call it loose and tight. You have to have a balance of loose and tight, right? You're tight around certain things. You set the parameters. You set the box. Here's the fence that we can work within. All students have to be successful. All students have to grow. All students have to be able to read, whatever the parameters are for what you're doing. Um, but then how you do it has got to be the best way. I just had this conversation yesterday with my academic dean over at my high school because we're talking about TSI prep for students. And my parameter was there must be TSI prep. We are a school that has at risk students. We want our students to be college and career ready. Taking the TSI is part of that being successful. That allows them to take college courses. We want them to be able to do that in high school. That is my box. Now, what program you use, I don't care what program you use. If you're going to do it 2 days a week or 3 days a week, if you're going to have a teacher do it or contract out, those are the decisions I'm leaving to you as the expert who knows your kids, as the expert who knows your campus, as the expert who knows your teachers. If I were to tell him, no, you have to use this curriculum and you have to do it on this day and you have to have the English teacher do it, who's already stressed out to the hilt because she's got all of these accountability requirements, then I just don't believe in that. I think you empower people, feel empowered whenever you trust their decision making ability. And how do you trust their decision making ability? By the data that you get. And sometimes initially that's stepping out on faith, right? So when I have somebody who's brand new, it might be a little more guided. So I really believe in like the standing meeting. So if you're doing something new, so for like teachers in this curriculum, then I believe in weekly data meetings. So show me your data and we look at your data together. And if your data says that the curriculum you're using, the activities you're using are being successful, then I'm going to give you a big pat on the back and say, keep doing it. If your data is not good, then I'm going to say, this data is not giving us what we need. Let's dig into what you're doing and how you're doing and what you're using. And that makes teachers be more self reflective and critical. And if I know I'm coming into you and bringing you data, then I'm not going to be unprepared. I'm going to want to bring my best and put my best foot forward. I'm going to do my very best. So I think when you do it that way, it's just backwards to me to tell people how to do things and then fuss at them about the results. It's better to give them the parameter of the results you want and then allow them to be as creative because they can come up with a million different ways. Me giving them one way is not the answer. So I'm very anti canned curriculum. I do love standards. Let's all agree on, in Texas, we have the TEKS. So I believe in the TEKS. That's the standard that we want. I don't even mind the assessments, but everything in between, just get out of a good teacher's way. That's my philosophy. Just get out of their way. Get out of a good principal's way.
I love it. So, how do you encourage the innovation and adaptability within your team while maintaining that strategic focus? More so the innovation portion of it.
We're project based learning here. So that is at the core of what Cedars believes. Now, I've not always been at places that were like that. So this has been a really great place for me to land because it matches up very well with my own philosophy. But for people who are out there, or if I were speaking to my former self, right, back in the day in a more standardized district or traditional schools, um, again, I think it goes back to having people set goals around the standards and then doing regular check ins for progress. And then just getting excited with them when they try new things, making it safe. It's got to be safe to try new things. If you try something and you fail and I smack you around about it, then you're not going to try anything new. So you have to set some safe spaces where it's okay. This may or may not work, but we're going to try it. One of the things I really believe in are pilots. I love having people pilot something because it's safe, right? So if I say, look, here's this new curriculum, I want you to pilot it. And if you're successful, great. If you're not successful, now obviously you're not going to let students in schools fail and that sort of thing. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that if it doesn't meet our expectations completely, it's going to be okay. And run with it and just encouraging people because I think especially teachers, and again, it goes back to that sort of canned curriculum and expectation. It's no, you didn't teach this on Monday from 9 to 10, and you didn't give this exact 10 question quiz and whatever. So smack, smack, smack. Um, it has to be that teachers are like, okay, you did that and it didn't work. It was kind of my parenting style too. When my child wanted to touch something, I'm like, you sure you want to do that? And then, oh, you want to do that again? No? Okay. Okay. That was probably not a good idea, huh? Natural consequences are the best. But I just go back to making it safe. Teachers, a lot of times, were good students who followed the rules. Teachers like to follow rules. So you have to make it safe for them to occasionally break a rule so that they can try something new. It's really okay. And for me, it's exciting. I actually have to watch myself because I would be doing innovative things all the time. And it just makes people nervous. They like to be able to predict. And so as a leader, that's one thing that I've learned is I have to balance that out, innovation and change with things that people can rely upon that are consistent over time. So it is a balance. Innovation is great, but it's got to be paired with some continuity as well. But it boils down to me to being safe, allowing them to feel like I'm not going to, rake you across the coals if it doesn't turn out exactly the way we thought it would turn out.
You've mentioned the importance of empowering your staff to solve problems independently. What tools or frameworks do you provide to support this?
It just depends on the person, right? If they're somebody who's very inexperienced, or if they're a seasoned leader versus a first year teacher, um, that will determine my level of guidance. And Maggie Boozer, she is a person who I took to 3 different cities with me because she's just somebody who was so hungry to do everything. And so 3 different times I hired her. And she would tell the story of let me give you a heads up on Dr. S. Like when you go in there, you need to already go in there having thought about some possible answers. And one of my best tools I learned from a leadership training that I went through at Rice University. And it's one simple question. I teach it to everybody. And it is, what does that look like? So when somebody comes into you and they say, we just need to get better here at disciplining our students. So then, I mean, it's very nebulous. Most of the time, when people come into you with a problem, it is in the clouds. It is so nebulous. And we immediately want to start, we are doing this and this and this. We want to be defensive and tell them all the things we are doing. And then we could do this and this. And I do neither. Um, I just simply ask them, okay, uh, if you want us to get better at discipline, what does that look like? And they really have to think, first of all, what's the problem? And when I teach this to people, I use love as the example, like with a relationship, like a personal relationship. So if I walked up to my husband and said, I just want you to love me more, if he said that to me, what that might mean is me cooking him a nice meal, or it might mean that I sit with him or go on a motorcycle ride or sit with him in a hunting lease, something like that. For me, it might mean that he brought me flowers or that he took out the trash, something simple, or picked his socks up. I don't know. Um, but it could be a million different things. And so it's not on me to determine what that person is thinking. It's on them to explain it to me. And then we can work through the answer to that question, what it looks like. But what it really does is it makes them focus on what the end, again, back to the results, right? This is what I want the result to be. Until I know what you really want the result to be, all of my solutions might be heading us in the completely wrong direction. And that's probably my number one tool is just to simply ask them, what does that look like? And most of the time they're stumped and I don't know, I came to you, but you're the one who's telling me that you have a problem with it. I need to understand what the problem is. And the way I understand what the problem is by knowing the difference between what you want it to be and what it is right now. Because somewhere in between there are the answers to what we need to do. But I don't, it's like having a roadmap to a city. If I don't know what city we're going to, I can't tell you if we should take a plane, train, or automobile. And so I use that a lot. And people start to, after a while of dealing with me, they start to understand she's going to ask you that question. So you need to come in already prepared with your list of our discipline's not good because kids are, when I was in a private Catholic school, it was kids' shirts were untucked, the things that we worried about. Kids were chewing bubble gum. Maybe when I was in a 6A school, it was girls are wearing midriffs or kids are walking out of class or kids are cussing teachers. And so once I understand, okay, well, we don't want those things now, and I can look at the systems that we have in place and see where the gaps are. Um, that's my biggest strategy. I don't have a big toolbox because I have this hammer that just seems to work so often. So I use it a lot.
And depending on experience, I think you're right. Those closest to the problem are usually closest to the solution as well. So I love that you bring that in them into the conversation and get their feedback so that you guys are able to come up with a solution together.
Yeah, I think that I'm part right now of a leadership institute through Region 13, and um, Dr. Thompson there, who leads that institute, said something that I know, but he put it in words that made me really think, yeah, this is the problem with a lot of leaders, is our job is not to fix the problem. Our job is to make sure the problem gets fixed. And you know, the other part of that is a little self-serving on my part, I'll be honest. Because if I come up with the solution, I am now responsible for the consequences of that. If it doesn't meet your expectations, and if I didn't get a clear read on what your expectations were, so again, I just go, oh, here's how I'll fix discipline, and I do the things. It wasn't what you wanted. It didn't even address the problems that you had in your head because I never asked for those. Now you blame me. Now, not only do we have a discipline problem, you blame me for a bad solution or not fixing it. So it's just a lose situation. You got to have some skin in the game with me. So I'm very much about collaboration, and I'll collaborate with anybody. I every morning I was telling my husband this morning because my coffee maker in my RV keeps making the switch. I'm like, maybe I should take it to my office because it keeps blowing the breaker. And I'm like, nope, I'm not taking it to the office. I expressly do not have a coffee maker in my office because that makes me have to go to the cafeteria every morning where I check in with my cafeteria staff because I know that's an area on this particular campus that can spark drama. So I go there because I'm going to make that connection every day. So there's just also some strategic places I put myself in to make sure that I'm also preempting problems. I mean, that's the ideal situation, right? When you can anticipate and you can preempt. So that's another strategy is just to get to know your people, to build relationships and know where you need. Some people need more love. Some people need more conversation. Others would prefer to never see you darken their door because that to them means that you trust them. And for others, it's you don't love me if you don't come see me. That's another, to me, that's another problem solving strategy because it's about preempting problems, not waiting for them to happen.
So that's actually funny that you say that. I think some of that might be generational. As a millennial, if I don't
Mhm.
get constant feedback, I feel like I'm doing something wrong.
Yes, I know you're kind. I could be your mother, so I know you're kind. And yes, and that's okay. It really is okay. It's important as a leader to know your people and know what they need. My very best friend is somebody who needs constant reinforcement. And her son, I've hired her son twice, and he'll tell me, like, oh, my mom, and whatever. I'm like, I love your mom. And I know her, and I know that's what she needs, and that doesn't bother me. So as a leader, you have to get comfortable with, this person doesn't want me around very much. This person wants me around all the time. And I may seem like this bubbly, outgoing person, but I'm actually super introverted. And one-on-one conversations like this are great for me. You put me in a room of 20, 30 people, and I'm like, huh. um, but I'll fake it till I make it, But just over time as a leader, I've learned you just have to adjust, and you have to be flexible and meet people where they are. And if you need them to go to another place, that's okay. But as a leader, you have to first go where they are and then bring them back at a pace that is going to work.
So, given all of your experiences, how do you envision the future of education evolving in the next decade? And what role will leadership play in that evolution?
I think that education is going to become very differentiated. We're already seeing, charter schools came aboard 20, 25 years ago. Now we're moving for these ESA accounts. And there are people who are very upset about that and don't like that. Everybody's like, oh, you're going to take my money. And everybody's got a little angst around it, I think. But I'm maybe one of the few people, I want them to be held to the same standards as us. But homeschooling has grown. Actually, homeschooling in Texas is bigger than charter schools, and is growing and growing, especially since COVID. And I think it's because parents and families alike are seeking things that feel more customized to them. So I see, if we're going to keep going, we're going to have to find more ways to customize. The days of the straight rows and everybody does the same assignment, which is again why I'm like, what are we doing with these canned curriculum things? We're going in the wrong direction. When you look at that's why parents are leaving, that's why teachers are leaving the school system. um, I think everybody's got to get on board with the fact that we're moving to a more customized, individualized way of learning and getting educated. And it's okay. It's harder. It's more complicated. It's more expensive, probably. But it's what the world is demanding, and it's going to continue to demand. It's never going to go back to the one room schoolhouse or even the 80s. It's not going to go back to that. It's going to keep progressing. And I do think young people need socialization, So I would like to see us getting a little more balanced, right? We've swung way over here with the testing side. And now there's this move for career and technical and being prepared for jobs. I agree with shifting back in that direction. But somewhere in the middle is the human that, has social emotional needs. My dissertation was on the academic performance of at-risk students, and the impact of social emotional intelligence at risk students. And, from my research, and it was just a small study, but it does impact students, how students feel socially and emotionally. So, I also would like to see that we're moving toward balancing that out. There has been a push for that, and like all the pendulum swings, sometimes it's a little too far over here, too touchy feely. It doesn't have to be all that, but it does have to consider that we are humans with feelings and emotions, and teenagers with hormones, and all of that has to be considered when we're trying to also educate them. Learning styles, their home life, everything has to be taken into. It's not just like, we have a service here, you come here, you get your car washed, you drive through, that's it. It's not that anymore, and it can't continue to be that. So I'm excited about it. It's scary, but it's also exciting.
And as a huge proponent of public school, I feel awful because my daughter actually goes to Acellus Academy, which is basically a homeschool.
Mhm.
And what you said about how we get to pick and choose the curriculum, that's amazing. Our school district has about 500 students total, and there's no way she could learn French or German or Spanish or sign language like what she's doing right now. It's just not possible. That aspect of it is great. She also takes social emotional learning, and that was great too. So they talked about, this was last week, tattletelling. So it was very good for a fifth grade level. And they said tattletelling can be bad, but at the same time, if there's something that needs to be told to an adult, do it. And so to see that, that's not something that we really necessarily use in today's public school education or curriculum because we're just not working on that holistic person.
Yeah, it's that focus on testing and this um, canned curriculums. Like we've got a list of things that we have to do, and that's just not on the list. But it is all about the tasks that have to be accomplished, not about the student. One of my goals for years, and I am closer to it than I've ever been, is starting my own school. And it's one of the things that I love about the charter movement. I'm fine with the homeschool movement. I'm fine with the ESAs. I think that it's us having to recognize that students are more than just the curriculum that we teach, and that they have a wide diversity in needs and capabilities. And I've always worked with at-risk students, and I've always believed in them. They may need additional supports, they may need different structures at times, or maybe they need nothing and they're just killing it, but not putting things into these boxes that are pre-labeled, but really just allowing for that innovation, that growth, that differentiation. It's exciting. It's exciting stuff. And listening to how your daughter's school works, that might not work for every parent or every student, but it works for your daughter. And that's so important. I have such a heart for kids. I hate to see when they're just not thriving. I don't want them to just be having a good experience where I want them to be thriving. I want them to be excited. I want them to be energized. And it's something that is getting harder and harder to accomplish with all the weights that have been put on. So when I hear stories of those kinds of things, I'm like, how can you not get excited about that? How can anybody criticize that when kids are having amazing experiences and they are loving learning and they're excited? Then it's good. It's good stuff. I don't care who you are, it's good stuff.
So, what are some common organizational challenges that you see in schools today? And how can our leaders use strategic thinking and problem solving to address them?
Probably the biggest one for me since I've become a superintendent has been staffing. Finding qualified people who want to be here, who will stay. The mobility in the workforce has just been crazy. People used to work and stay at jobs. Like I said, I started in Kansas City and then my husband moved me back to San Antonio. But once he moved me back to San Antonio, I stayed at John Jay High School for 15 years. I was like the furniture, and the teachers there, a lot of the teachers there had been there for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Kids would come back with their kids and be like, I had him as my science teacher, that sort of thing. You just don't see that anymore. And from a leader's perspective, it is so hard because your identity of your campus, of your school, is really tied up in the people and its values. And when the people are constantly turning over, you're trying to teach people. It's like build the plane and fly at the same time, right? You're trying to teach them the values of the organization and have them live the values of the organization at the same time. And that takes time. To me, developing a solid culture is really, really hard. I had a teacher resign yesterday, and she's got things going on in her life. I fully understand why she had to resign. But I need somebody who's going to be in there with those students every day, that when they get up in the morning, they want to come to school because they want to see Dr. S. Dr. S is going to be at the front of the classroom. Dr. S is going to be the one leading them. If it's, oh, we had a sub again today, or, oh, we don't have a teacher yet, we got a long term sub. That's really been the biggest challenge. If I could wave a magic wand, I would just have this core group of teachers that would be here for years and years, and we would just keep doing the good work.
Teacher retention, that's really difficult, especially here in Oklahoma. We have teachers leaving the state constantly, and now we're working with a lot of teachers who are on alternative certificates who haven't quite had that pedagogy education.
Yeah, so you're dealing with a double whammy there, right? Because you're bringing somebody in who doesn't know your culture, that you're having to give them that, and then they also don't know their craft. And so you're having to give them that. So it's like having a crying baby all the time in a way, because it's just, oh, we can't get to enjoying because we're too busy trying to do all the things to get them ready to do the things. If I could guarantee that somebody would stay with me for 5 years, even, okay, let me just have you for 6 months and just indoctrinate you and make sure that you know your craft, make sure that you understand our culture. Like I said, for us being project-based learning, I can tell the teachers who have a long standing, they've been in project based learning for a long time, they've been with us for a long time. My high school opened 9 years ago. It has the same principal that it had. And basically, there's 11 teachers there, and I would say 8 of them are the original 8. So the core group, critical mass of people. So when anybody comes in new, it's pretty quick that you can't help but adopt the culture, because you are just drowned in it, you are submersed in it. The culture is its almost like its own thing, its own entity. At my elementary school, it's bigger, and there is a core group of teachers that have been here for a very long time. The principal's been here for 15 years, and thank goodness. I don't think we would have the success that we have if we didn't have that level of continuity. But we're starting to experience some of that, turnover, and teachers who are not certified, teachers who are just not ready to do the things that they need to do. And the culture is not engulfing them the same way to keep them. And it's not just us. When I speak to other superintendents, both charter and traditional ISD, we're all experiencing the same things. And I could, if I were to do research, just quantitative research on this, I guarantee you, if I went to all the A districts, I would see long-standing retention rates with teachers, very clear cultural expectations, and it's hard to accomplish when you can't have that turnover all the time. Well, that's my biggest challenge.
So, what advice would you give to aspiring leaders who want to emulate your servant leadership style?
I would say connect with a really great mentor. Everybody needs a mentor. I have a mentor. After 35 years, I have mentors. Um, and I mentor other people, because I get my biggest gifts from giving things away. When I give something to someone else, a piece of advice or a little lesson, and I see them use it and they come back to me and they tell me that worked, then I grow as well. And when I'm working through a problem or I don't have the answer for them, I'm still growing. My biggest advice is to have a mentor and be a mentor. Because even if you're just starting, you could mentor somebody else.
So, if there's one thing that you hope listeners take away from this conversation about leadership, what would it be?
That good leadership is just, it's imperative and it's hard, but it's exciting. And you don't have to have a lot of tools. You don't have to know everything. You need a good mentor, and you need a few things that consistently work for you. Consistency, if I had to boil everything down, I might use the word consistency. Find things that you can be consistent at, and that can be consistent in your life, because we all have to have a foundation. You need to know that about yourself as a leader. And then I feel like it's every leader's obligation to give it away to somebody else.
Dr. S, I hope you don't mind me calling you
Yeah.
Dr. S.
No, that's great. That's what everybody calls me.
Thank you so much for sharing your incredible insights and experiences with us today. Your dedication to servant leadership and innovation is just truly inspiring. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Innovating Education. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time for more conversations that spark change in education. Until then, stay inspired and keep innovating.